When you were young, did you ever have anyone sing to you? Maybe a lullaby over your bed, or we got a little older, still a tucking in good night song? I did that with my son. Maybe just the memory of people singing happy birthday to you on the day. Maybe a relative, family member, or a music teacher or a Sunday school teacher who taught you a song by singing it to you first and then inviting you to join the song. I remember sitting on my grandmother's lap, and she would jostle me a little bit, bouncing me, and sing a song in which she had lyrics that said, "She loved me a bushel and a peck, and all to heck." And I did not know those units of measure, bushel and peck, but I experienced that was a great deal of love in the embrace and in the song. In Genesis, the first creation story, some of us may be familiar with the image of God hovering over an unformed world, a chaos and shadow, and that in the story it says, "And God spoke, and creation came into being." Over and over again, God said, God said, God said. And there are scholars, though, who note that in the language that this story was told and written in, the language of Hebrew, and if you've gone to a synagogue service, you may have noticed this yourself, there is something rhythmic, song-like often, in the Hebrew. And when we look at just how this creation story was written and shared, there are clearly stanzas, and some people call it poetry. But most likely, the idea is that this was a song, a creation song, and that God was not creating with a kind of staccato speaking, but rather with, as Professor Harold Hill in The Music Man says, sustained talking. Music, music. God singing over the unformed world and calling forth in the song a new creation. And that tracks, doesn't it? The idea of music, both a creative enterprise in and of itself, but that it inspires and moves people creatively. I think of an older relative who, whenever she was cooking, she would be singing a song in the kitchen. Or a neighbor whistling in the garden while working there, and then just the Disney song, "Whistle While You Work." And I think about a time in the past year where I was engaging in a common, after a certain age, surgical procedure early in the morning after fasting. And it's a surgical suite and being rolled in there, and there was music playing to motivate and inspire all those surgical teams who do the same procedure again and again and again to do it well. The music inspiring the creative healing work, we might say. And I was thinking about all of this, inspired by the line from the prophet Zephaniah. This idea that in the beginning, God is singing the creation into being, but that God is still singing. God is still singing. In the prophet, in the midst of the new chaos and pain that was being experienced in the time, the prophet says, God sings over the people. God still singing. So the idea of God singing over us, singing to us, even in our own time and our own place. And then thinking about our gospel reading with John the Baptist, it's our second reading connecting with John the Baptist, and thinking perhaps about the various words of the prophets as the song of God continuing, the song of God being offered to the people. But these are people who also understand this is not a song, the song of God is not to entertain. It's not just to then applaud afterwards. This is a song that has response. It is a song of call and response. It's a song where there's always the invitation to join in the song. Throughout the Hebrew scriptures, when God sang out someone's name, they sang back, "Here I am, Lord. Here I am. Here I am." This call and response, an ancient understanding of God singing over and to the people, and the people invited to respond, to enter in. And today, we are following a reading we heard last week where John has been inviting people to be part of God doing a new thing, God in some way singing a new song. We heard him quoting another prophet, another song. Every valley shall be exalted, every mountain and hill made low, the crooked made straight, the rough places plain. And how many of you cannot help me hearing those words, can't help but hear the tune from Handel that goes with them? So he's singing that song of God reforming, reshaping a new creation, making a way where it seems like there's no way. And these are people who know it is not just for entertainment. It's not just a song to soothe or to please. It's a song they're invited to join in on. And so they offer their part in the song. We heard it in the reading today. What then shall we do? What then shall we do? It is meant to be participatory. You don't get a new world if everyone keeps living the old way. What then are we to do? And then John offers the next verse. And it might have been a hard verse for them to hear. John tells them, gives them examples of what life in the reign of God, this life looks like, that Jesus is coming to bring. He said, well, if you got extra food, share it. If you have an extra cloak, give one of them away. And he says to the tax collectors, stop skimming off the top. And he tells the soldiers, the Roman soldiers, no more shakedowns. Now, we might hear this verse from a place of, some of us, middle class, place of privileges, and we're like, well, that's just good ethics, right? Share what you have, no white-collar crime, no shakedowns. But to the people in that time and place, a way they might have heard it, less an harmonious invitation, but more like nails on a chalkboard. A little screechy to them, that verse. Because, as we might recall, most people in that time and place barely have what they need to survive. And so the tendency, if you had extra food, well, salt it, store it, because one day you might not. If you have an extra cloak, you are wealthy, in a sense. So store it, because one day your current cloak will wear out, and you'll need another one. And there's this idea, like you're not necessarily trusting that when you need the food, you'll have it, or you'll need the cloak, you'll have the means or resources. So store up. And on that level, we get it, right? People have savings accounts. Churches have reserve funds. And often there's a sense of store, 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 in case something bad, in case something bad. So if we were told, like, nope, just use it all right now, give it all away, that can create anxiety. And that's how they're hearing this. And then the tax collectors and the soldiers, these are not the people getting invited to the holiday parties. They are not popular. They are considered traitors. They're agents of the empire that is occupying the territory, the Roman Empire. And so it wasn't necessarily, in the wholeness of things, a good life. So you had a few benefits, like skim off the top and people will look the other way. Or as a soldier, you could shake people down and get a little extra money. That was your benefits package. And John's saying, nope, God's reign, God's life does not look like that. It was likely a hard verse of the song to hear. But John is clear that to live into the realm, the reign of God's justice, mercy, and love, people have to join the song. If they don't join the song, it's not going to happen. The song of God is not intrusive and coercive. It's invitational. I had a neighbor who washed his cars obsessively. And I know that because every time he washed his cars, he played music in the driveway very loudly. And I could hear it everywhere in my own house or my own yard. That is an intrusive song. No one likes those kind of songs. That is not how God's song is. It's an invitational song. It invites our response. It invites us to join along. But it stretches us beyond the standard and old ways we might do things. So how do we join that song? Well, when we look at the life and ministry of Jesus, we see Jesus practicing what we hear John preaching. Now, sometimes there's this traditional Christian theology that Jesus is sort of magic, and Jesus just automatically going out singing that song. But what we see in his actual life and ministry is Jesus takes time, all the time, to listen for how God is still singing. Early in the morning praying, spending all night in prayer, listening for the song of God. Paying attention to the scriptures, the stories, hearing how God has been singing in the past. Moses radiant on a mountaintop. Miriam singing a song of triumph when they got out of the Egyptian clutches and through the Red Sea and toward the Promised Land. Mother Mary singing a song of the mighty from their thrones and the lowly lifted up, anticipating a new dawn, a new world. Jesus listened for how God was still singing. And the literal songs, the psalms that we often read, are songs sung in the temple, sung in the synagogue, sung in the home. Jesus was constantly immersed, and that's what the word baptize means, immersed in the song of the Spirit, in the song of God. So Jesus kept having refreshers, kept hearing God's song, asking, what then shall I do? And God would sing back in all kinds of ways. And this song has choreography, right? It's not a just sit still song. It's a song that moves you and that you embody the song and live it in the world. And then just like it's been from the beginning, as Jesus is the singer offering the song, singing over the people, it is not to entertain. It is not to please. It is to invite to join the song. He's singing the song saying, you can get in on it. You can follow me. You can be part of it. You can be immersed in the song of the Spirit, in the silences, in the literal singing of the community, in the stories, and be immersed in the song, and it gets in you, and you join in the choreography and the dance, and you offer the song and the movement in the world, and then other people hear it and experience from us and through us, and maybe some others will join in the song, and every valley shall be exalted, every mountain and hill made low, the crooked straight and the rough places smooth, and all people shall see the salvation of our God here and now. More mercy, more justice, more love, more beauty. I was thinking about something I read quite a few years ago. Some of you have heard of the author Anne Lamott. Anne Lamott has written books on writing and some fiction, but a lot of her writing has been around the spiritual life. And her first spiritual book was a spiritual autobiography called Traveling Mercies. And I recommend it. And if you're a little nervous, kind of a pearl clutcher person, offended easily, you might not like it. Because it's raw and honest and authentic, which is what I think spiritual life is. And so I love that book. Well, in her story, she talks about the way that music invited her into this life with God. And I'm going to share an excerpt from the book where she was still in the throes of addiction, both drugs and alcohol. But she would go, I think it was a swap meet or something in Marin City, California that took her into the community. But there was a storefront church, and the music coming from that storefront church, which by the way became her home church. But initially that storefront church, that music flowing from there drew her in, and I read what she writes. As she entered into the building and sat in the back in a folding chair so she could get out quickly. Then the singing enveloped me. It was furry and resonant, coming from everyone's very heart. There was no sense of performance or judgment, only that the music was breath and food. And as the music continued, she writes, the last song was so deep and raw and pure that I could not escape. It was as if the people were singing in between the notes, weeping and joyful at the same time. And I felt like their voices or something was rocking me in its bosom, holding me like a scared kid. And I opened up to that feeling, and it washed over me. It was the singing that pulled me in, and split me wide open. God is singing over us. It is a song of mercy, justice, love, healing, and hope. And we are invited to listen, to be immersed in the song, to join the song, to learn the choreography, to move, to dance, to offer it to others. Jesus shows us the way. Come and see. Come and sing. Amen.